So I never thought I'd say this, but Gore is going to the Olympics. Welcome to the Film Thread Podcast. I am Chris Gore. I'm excited to talk to an amazing filmmaker today who made an incredible documentary. And yes, it's about a person named Gore who goes to the Olympics. It's not me. It's not me. I don't think that's ever going to happen unless they have movie trivia at the Olympics. But I'm excited to welcome to the Film Thread Podcast, Bill Gallagher, the director of Runner, a remarkable documentary. He's all the way from Madrid right now talking to us.
Nice to see you, Gore. Chris. See, I called you Gore. Got Gore on the mind. Gore is the name of the subject of the film. So
yes, exactly. Well, first of all, I have to ask you how you can, his name is Gore. What's his last name?
Guor Mading.
Guor Mading. Okay. So Gore is a refugee from Sudan, which was in the midst of a horrible conflict, came to the United States, was recognized by his high school track teacher. Is that right? And just an incredible skill as a runner. When did you, and there's so much footage actually. When did you discover Gore and his remarkable talent? And then how did you convince everybody involved to be able to, have such an intimate portrayal of his life and his career as just an incredible athlete?
Sure. Well, I picked up the film a few weeks before the 2012 Olympics. So I had read a story in the newspaper that there was this man who had this incredible backstory of survival, survived multiple attempts on his life, survived an intense political situation in South Sudan. And he had qualified for the Olympics, and he had said no because Sudan, the country that oppressed him, Sudan and South Sudan sort of broke away after a civil war. And he said no to the country of to Sudan. And I was like, who says no to the Olympics? I need to talk to this guy. This guy sounds like he has some principles. So within a few minutes, I was talking to him on the phone, and he sort of invited me to back to his village to film him. He's like, I haven't seen my mom and dad in 20 years. Maybe you can come back with a camera and film. So yeah, within, days, I was at the 2012 Olympics, and that's where I sort of met Gore for the first time was then.
Well, it's fascinating because he really, during the midst of this conflict as a child, ran for his life. And obviously there's no footage of that, but in one of the sequences you use some animation to kind of illustrate this story as he narrates. It's shocking. I can't even imagine as a child experiencing that conflict that close up, and then it ends up becoming not quite like a Sophie's Choice, but in a sense like his parents he had to leave his family and basically in his mind as a kid just decide I'm never going to see them again ever in my life. It's an incredible moment illustrated with animation.
Yeah. Well, we had this problem for a very long time, was that a huge portion of Gore's story occurred in the past when he was a child, when he was 8 years old. And I knew for this film to work, you had to feel what it's like for an 8-year-old boy to leave his mother and father and just go on your own during wartime. I can't imagine it. I have a 3-year-old. I just can't imagine it. So we can say these words, we can talk about it in an interview, but I knew that folks just had to sort of experience it. So the problem was we didn't have any video or photos during that time. So we were left with a choice, do you do reenactments? And I couldn't wrap my head around that. Or do you do animation? And honestly, I haven't seen animation in documentaries work that well. There's a lot of times I'll see animation in documentary. I just don't like it. I don't think it works. So it started, a 1.5 year journey of trying to find the right animators. And because I learned a lot during that process. I had never directed animation before, and it couldn't be too cartoonish, of course, and it couldn't be too realistic because it would take you out of the film. So I think they ended up nailing it. And what I think it gave the audience was just the ability to experience sort of Gore's journey as a child and all sort of the pain that he went through just by looking at his face, even if it was animated.
Well, if I might comment, I think that the animation is perfectly done. It's not Hanna-Barbera, right? It's not, it's told in a realistic way. It's subtle, and in addition, if you think about it, children are so exposed to animation in a way it was without any, a recreation. You're right, would not have worked, but animation. I mean, that's the way a lot of kids. That's most of the content that kids watch when they're single-digit aged. They watch
Mm.
they watch animation, they watch cartoon.
Mm.
So to see it illustrated as a cartoon completely makes sense to me. The I will say the moment, I don't know how you arrange this. I want to talk about it. It's the part of the movie that I think that anyone that would watch it that just has any sense of empathy or humanity just breaks down, which is him being reunited with his family. His family members are falling. I mean, they're like to their knees and just so taken in the emotion of the moment. You're watching this and it's played without commentary. He's just, here he is, and because you do see him younger in high school, what he looked like, and here he is grown as an adult. I mean, um, it's Gore as an adult, and
Mm.
to see him reunited with his family. I mean, it's the moment that I think anyone that watches it gets really choked up. How did you orchestrate that and then document it, but without interrupting anything?
Yeah, great question. It's interesting how that unfolded. I was supposed to obviously be there at his village. I had a ticket. I had all the travel arrangements and a crew, and they wouldn't let me in the country. So I had to scramble and hire, and worked with a South Sudanese cinematographer, which it ended up being perfect. I mean, it killed me at the time to not be there, but looking back on it, it was probably the right thing to happen because there was a local cinematographer there alone without anybody shooting, and no director, no me there, no nobody taking sound. It was just him and his camera. He could speak Dinka, which is Gore's tribal native language, and he just let it unfold. And it's one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever seen, honestly. And even editing the film, over the course of the month that I was probably editing that scene, I would just weep, honestly. And over the course of that edit, I was just constantly thinking about sort of my own relationship with my own mom while I was editing that, which I think a lot of people end up doing when they watch the film. And I hear lots of interesting stories about that. And then during the course of the editing, I ended up having a child, and I started thinking about, oh my God, what if I hadn't seen my child for 20 years? It just sort of, it's this universal moment that you can't help but just be absolutely devastated and moved. And you really, at that point, you see what war really does to people. Gore was one of the lucky ones to see his mom and dad alive after 20 years. And, it took, it took his mom and dad, 2 days to really truly believe that that was really Gore. But it just shows how devastating war is, and yeah, it was heartbreaking.
That is such a pivotal part of his story. I've never heard of a I've never heard. I love the Olympics personally. I watch it. That
Mm.
sense of like world unity always gets to me. The human stories, the struggle to get to that world stage and be able to, perform, people at the top of their game in all categories. So I get caught up in the pomp and circumstance of the Olympics, but I've never heard of anyone actually ever sort of just deciding I'm not gonna not going to represent my country. How did that all unfold? And what went into your process in terms of documenting that?
Yeah, so it's a little complicated, but at the time, South Sudan was a brand new country. They had just gained independence and they had not been recognized by the International Olympic Committee. So it wasn't enough that they were a full-blown country. They had to be recognized by the International Olympic Committee. So he couldn't run for South Sudan, the country that he was born in, the country that broke away from Sudan during the war. And as a sort of a goodwill gesture, the country of Sudan offered him a spot, as I was mentioning before. And he said, thank you, but 28 members of my family died at the hands of the Sudanese government. I cannot run for you. I cannot put the Sudanese flag on my, put the Sudanese flag on my shirt and run in the Olympics. And I just thought that took what a real moral foundation that he had, because a lot of people could justify that, but it wasn't even an option for Gore. So he said, thank you, but no. And finally, a few days before the Olympics, the International Olympic Committee made a special decision that, okay, well, you can run under the International Olympic Committee flag as essentially a person without a country. So he ended up running in 2012 Olympics under the Olympic flag.
And now he is going to go to the Olympics in, well, I mean, I guess the 2020 Olympics is now the 2021 Olympics. It's going to be in Tokyo, and it's rescheduled to next year. Am I correct? I haven't kept up with it. There's too many things to keep up with being canceled these days. It's like you can't, every day it's a new thing. I can't keep up. So yeah, but so he will be back in 2021. But if
he qualifies, he hasn't qualified yet.
Right. Well, there was that terrible sequence where he got lost during one of the marathons, which I don't know that you can 100% blame him for, right? I mean, maybe that's just bad signage. Tell me the story behind that.
Oh man, that was one of the worst days of my life. Yeah, I mean, he was running a qualifying time at a marathon, the Ottawa Marathon, and there was, a sign. Basically, they were having the half marathon was being run that same exact time, and there was a sign, marathon this way, half marathon this way, and Gore went the wrong way, but he was following a motorbike, and so it was sort of devastating, because it's one of those moments where you say, well, if there was no such thing as the documentary, he probably would have qualified right then and there. So it was sort of super devastating. But what's interesting about that scene is that's one of the scenes that I get talked about most often after a screening at a film festival, because everybody can sort of identify times when they fall or when they go off course, metaphorically or literally. So that sort of scene really shows Gore, and I think the whole film shows Gore as sort of this everyman that everybody can relate to. He's not the guy that won the gold medal, and that's what I like about this film. There's so many of those films that it's about the guy who's the champion or the woman who's the champion, and he's not that guy. He's the rest of us. So yeah, it was devastating that day, but it ended up working out for the better, I think.
Well, what's really interesting, if you try this one of these days. I love asking people who won the fight in the first Rocky movie, and everybody says Rocky, and that's actually not true.
Right.
Rocky lost, but I kind of think that this is why I'm a fan. Like, as a movie geek, I'm a fan of sports, because it's like a sporting event, especially when there are so many stakes. There's so many high stakes. It's like watching a great documentary unfold live. Right. That's what a sporting event is to me, which is why I like documentaries. But sports documentaries are very clear cut, and I think that sometimes it's like it depends on how you define winning, right? To me, in the first Rocky movie, Rocky Balboa was seeking respect, and he won that. He won respect. He won the girl. He won the respect of the community. I'm getting chills thinking about it, because I saw that movie so many times in the theater when I was a kid. It was at the Dollar Theater down the street, and I remember seeing it. It was like one of those great experiences. But I feel that way also in sports, like with this, the important thing is not the gold medal. The important thing is the achievement of being reunited with his family, of becoming a figure and a hero to other people, just representing, refugees and what happened to Sudan. Right. I do want to talk about that for a moment. This movie is being released on, if I'm correct, it's Friday, July 19th,
Correct.
which is World Refugee Day. Tell me about World Refugee Day and what your plans are to release the film, because as I know, I'm sure your butler is standing in the background. Not a lot of documentary filmmakers are particularly wealthy.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're not wealthy, and it would be fine if you were, but I'm just saying
I'm
that
not
when
far
I meet
from it.
when I meet and talk to documentary filmmakers, they're always people that are just passionate about a project, that put all
Right.
their heart and soul and finances into a movie.
Right.
And I know that you are self-distributing the film tied in with World Refugee Day. Tell me a
Right.
little bit about the release, and then I don't know anything about World Refugee Day other than that it's it's on the 19th, so I got that right.
Yeah. So we're releasing it on June 19th at virtual cinema. So we're partnering with marathons, NGOs, running groups, film festivals, and theaters. And we're giving a portion back to all of those folks. And there's a lot of good stuff going on. So even some theaters have chipped in and say, we're going to donate it back, some of our proceeds back to refugees. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. June 20th actually is World Refugee Day. We're doing a special Q&A live with Gore and I. And yeah, World Refugee Day was created to just raise awareness, for refugees. UNHCR is a big refugee organization. They often have lots of programs to raise awareness, to just show the plight of the refugees. So yeah, we're just excited to partner with all these organizations and sort of give back. It's kind of a nice thing. It's a tough time for everybody. Theaters are taking a hard hit. Festivals are taking a hard hit. Nonprofits. So whoever you choose, you go to runnerdoc.com, and whoever you choose to purchase the film, from a portion of the proceeds go back to them. So.
Well, I mean, I've said many times before, the minute that physical movie theaters open, I'm going to be there first day. I mean, I'll wear a mask if that's what's required. I'll follow all the rules. I'm fine. But I'm going to the movies.
Yes.
And I'm seeing more and more of these virtual cinemas. I'm really curious what the numbers are for independent filmmakers. I'm really curious, like, if this is a business model that's sustainable. Obviously, I love to see movies in the theater, but I can't tell you over the last few months how many films I've purchased that are just, new independent films available. And they're like anywhere from like $9.99 to $14.99 to $20. I mean,
Right.
if I'm sitting with my girlfriend watching the movie, it's technically cheaper than going to the theater. I prefer a theatrical experience,
Sure.
but I love this idea of giving back to the movie theaters because I really want to see them reopen and continue to thrive. I'm curious about this virtual cinema and if it's a successful model. So, I mean, what are your just for independent filmmakers that listen to the Film Trap podcast or watch us on YouTube? What can you say about, like, how you went about this? Is it being, if I understand correctly, it's being released through VHX? Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Vimeo VHX is our sort of branded platform. Yeah.
Okay, cool. But runnerdoc.com is where you go. I'm curious the numbers because I've been involved in so many, like, where I've had friends make films and they got big distribution, they got the deal and they got this, and then they never got any money.
Right.
I like this model. It's almost like, okay, you could get the quote $500,000 deal on paper where you see no money because it's
Right.
all accounted for, or you
Right.
could make $100,000 in virtual cinema and it's a smaller amount of money, but more of that money goes into your pocket.
Right.
Is that the intention?
In some respects, yeah. So taking a step back, right? So I think this whole virtual cinema thing started with, well, theaters are closed, right? They're not making any money, and
Right.
filmmakers like me are unable to release their films. We had sort of planned for a typical theatrical release, That's not happening. No one's going to the theater at this point. So we're like, there's this thing called virtual cinema to keep, the theater's lights on, and to help, filmmakers. And we're seeing it. Well, let's try it. It's an opportunity. But to your point, Chris, we have no idea about the financials of it. 10 people could purchase a ticket on Friday, or 10,000. We have no idea. We have over 100 partners, most of them theaters. So we just don't know. But there's a lot of it that I like about the model. It's sort of, as you sort of just teed up, a lot of, independent filmmakers, they sell their film to a distributor or partner with a distributor, and they just sort of give it to them, and they pray that it'll do something and go somewhere. And after, in this case, working on a film 8 years, it's just tough to just hand that control over. And definitely would if the right folks came along. But what I like about this virtual cinema model is that the power is back in the independent filmmaker's hands. You control the platform, you control who you partner with, and you can do things like give a percentage of the proceeds back to the partnering organizations, like refugee organizations. So it's a really interesting model. You see all the paperwork, you see all your customers, and the harder you work, the more people see your film, which is really cool. So the jury is still out. I haven't seen any financials on what people are making, but it's so new and it's so scary. But we figured, well, let's try it. It's a good opportunity to, and we'll see.
Well, I'm excited to see how this experiment. I have your email, so maybe we can correspond. You can kind of give me an update on this.
Yes.
But I love this concept because I read a book years ago that I would recommend to anybody. You gotta get this book. You can get it used.
Mm-hmm.
It's called The Tenacity of the Cockroach. And The Tenacity of the Cockroach, it was published, I think, maybe 20 years ago by the Onion AV Club. And all it is Q&As with artists from the world of music and film and, making art. And it's how they took their careers back and did it themselves. For example, one of my favorite interviews in that book is with musician Amy Mann. And she talks about how she had this big record label deal. She was in the band Till Tuesday. I mean, she was, of course, screwed by the record company, which is a traditional story. I mean, you could replace independent film company in that. And she actually started her own. It was in like the mid to late 90s. She started her own label, started putting out her own music, built up her own audience. It was a smaller audience, but they all supported her. I know I did. And what I love is that the first album she put out that was independent, she had the word fuck in one of her songs. And I think one of the lines is "you fucked it up." And it's like, it's like it's the first song on the first album that she put out after leaving this corporate deal. But what's incredible about this book is the running thread is all artists who took their career back, decided to do it themselves, and invented a business model that worked for them. And what I'm hoping is that there's a business model that works for independent filmmakers. And I think that the world crisis that we're dealing with right now, everything from, the protests to the lockdown to, quarantine and COVID and all this, I actually think is a huge opportunity for independent filmmakers to reinvent the business model.
Agreed.
And so I really want to see, because I'm just sort of tired of the franchise filmmaking, the factory filmmaking, these big corporations taking these franchises and then just sort of regurgitating them into like, this is going to appeal to everybody. I like a good studio movie if it's well done, but I prefer independent films. It's sort of like my, the studio movies are like the fast food, and a good indie documentary like Runner is like a steak with a fine wine.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So I hope that we can correspond, and I want to get a follow-up and see. And I'm plugging, if you're watching us on YouTube, I'm plugging the website is right down there. Go to runnerdoc.com to see Runner, and you will be supporting local theaters and refugee organizations. Bill Gallagher, thank you so much for joining us on the Film Threat podcast. It's really been a pleasure. I really appreciate it. This is awesome.
It's been a pleasure to meet too. Thanks, Chris.
Cool. All right. Take care.
Bye.